So our story begins many years ago. We worked with two kinds of kids. Kids who are left out and kids who are left behind. Now kids who are left out are very visible. In urban areas you see them on the streets. In rural areas you see them with the goats in the fields. Everybody knows that these kids are out of school. The kids know it themselves. If you ask kids whether they go to school, they always have some reason for why they are not going to school. So it's a problem, but it's a visible problem. And everybody all the way from the highest to the village authorities are aware of this problem. The other kind of kids that we've been working with are kids who've been left behind. Now who are these kids? These kids go to school. Every morning their mother gets up, gets them ready, mother or father, and sends them to school. And then after 5 or 6 hours they come back home. Everybody feels that things are not quite as good as they ought to be, but there is a sense of unease, but without a sense of concreteness about where the kids are at. So let's look at a few kids like this just to see what do we mean when we say kids who are left behind.
Sundari, Dorek Matre Canado, Ka.
What were we? Okay. So these are kids in 3rd and 4th. They've been going to school for a couple of years. But as you can see, they're really struggling with the most basic thing that we need. Whether you're in school or not in school, you need to learn how to read. Once you learn how to read, there are many things that you can do as you go forward. So in Pratham, we worked quite large scale with kids like this for many years. And we were becoming frustrated at the fact that although we worked really hard, kids made progress, they were not making as much progress as they needed to make if they were going to have a really good chance at finishing 8th or 10th or 12th or further. After working for a year with kids who were maybe 10, who were reading like this, whether they were in school or out of school, we found that they were, it took a year for them to get to where they could actually start engaging with text. Now at 10, I don't know how many of you have seen 5th standard textbooks recently. I have quite a lot of difficulty even in reading the 10th standard textbooks myself. I have 27 years of education. So if you want to get our kids ready for dealing with what they have to do, we clearly have to help these kids who are left behind make progress much faster. So about 10 years ago, within Pratham, about 300 or 400 of us decided let's take a month off, or a month on actually. And the month on was to say, if I have children, let's say 20, 25 or 30 kids of the Deepak and Satika type that we saw, what can I do in a month? The month was just a number, it's a convenient number. It could have been 2 months, it could have been 15 days. But we wanted to see for ourselves, what can I do for a kid who is right now not able to read even a sentence? How long will it take to get them to move to this level? And we were working in many different cities, working with different languages. We needed a common vocabulary. And what we came up with was something like this. And if you can't read it, don't worry. 50% of moms whose kids are in school can't read it either. What we came up with something very simple. On the left, you can see was the goal. The goal was we wanted kids to be able to read a simple story, obviously with understanding. When people say kids read without understanding, I don't think that's true. And you may have kids who are not even at the simple letter level. So we tried to figure out these were the 4 or 5 steps. And across all our languages, when we started with the kids, we could tell which kids were at what level. And then the challenge for us was to say that if a child is today 8 or 9 or 10 or more and not able to read simple words as yet, what do I need to do? And over the course of this 1 month, how much can I help a kid progress to the goal? Lots of different things happened. One of the things was to produce a lot of reading material. These simple 4 or 5 sentences that you see, strangely in India, we have very little reading material at that level. We have children's books, not very many, but we have very little which helps beginning readers read. And having done all of this, we figured out that across the board, many of us who worked in this 1 month could actually get kids to start reading fluently. And once you start reading fluently, you can then fuel yourself through the stuff that you have to read, whether it's in school or not. Let's go back to the two kids we saw and let's see how well they did from where we left them off to where we can catch them now. Just to remind you where they were.
आज बाजारात आई गेली, आई कोंबडा आणायला गेली, मी सोबत गेलो कोंबडा विकत घेतला. फुलांवर फुलपाखर बसले होते आणि झोक्यावर बसले.
This is the kind of change that we can bring about, and this is something that we learned very quickly ourselves, and for the last 10 years have worked with schools, with teachers, with parents, with people in the community to say that this big jump can be taken. We don't have to wait for schools to do it. If we participate, whoever we are, in every village there are people who actually can help kids to move ahead, then this is what we can do. And I think that this huge campaign that is going on in India right now actually needs much more people to participate, because around every one of us there are kids who are stuck like Deepak and Satika and can be moved ahead. Another interesting thing happened while we were doing this. The simple tool that you saw that we had actually created mainly for the purposes of helping ourselves organize kids and figure out instructional tactics, strategies to move them forward, we noticed was doing a couple of other things. And I remember a case of an elderly lady in a village in UP who asked me what I was doing. I was very busy with the kids, trying to get them to read. And so because I wanted to focus on the kids, and because maybe we are very kid oriented and not grandma oriented, I said to her, I'm doing a survey. Hum survey kar rahe hain. This old lady tapped me on the back and she said, no, this is not a survey. Actually, it's the best definition of surveys that I've ever heard. So I said, why do you say it's not a survey? She said, because surveys are done when you don't know things, but I do, and you come from the city to figure out what I know already. But this is different. It's different because I don't know, you don't know, and in many cases, the child who you're asking to read also doesn't know whether he's going to be able to do this. So this is not a survey. And I realized when we did this that actually the act of taking something simple in front of grandmothers, parents, teachers, getting kids to read was actually a whole exercise of demystifying something that seemed quite complicated because it usually happens in school. Innumerable cases of kids who were, let's say, in the middle of the summer on the mango tree or inside the river, once this activity would start, would first jump down from the tree or out of the river, and very interestingly, in the river you usually don't wear too many clothes, would go home, put on a shirt and then come and say, let me do this and let me see where I'm at. So apart from the tool helping us to figure out what should be the way to solve it, we found that the tool was a very easy way to actually get people engaged. And this is something that we hadn't actually planned on. You can't actually solve a problem until you see the problem. Today in India we have over 96% kids in rural India enrolled in school. We have, depending on the state, attendance rates which vary from 90% to 60% across the country. But if we find that a large number of kids are like the two kids you saw who are stuck, this is not a problem that is visible to people because these kids are all going to school and we just assume that whatever is happening in school is not as good as it ought to be, but we have no sense of where children are today. So with the tool and with the experience that we had, we started doing a lot of work at the village level. And the way we would do the work at the village level would be actually to together create a little report card. Now, like India, or like the 63 cities we heard about, that's a big problem. In many cases, our villages are also very big. You know, India has a problem, what can I do about it? You know, other people in India should solve the problem. The village has a problem, it's a very big problem, what can I do about it? But when you move down to the hamlet level, everybody in the hamlet actually knows each other. Every kid that is there is also somebody about whom you not only know that this kid goes to school, but you know a little bit more about it. So we would prepare these little hamlet report cards as we went along, and after a couple of days would have a meeting at the village level to actually discuss the problem. And there too we learned many lessons. For example, I remember, and my own experience is a lot from UP and Bihar, Perhaps, you know, in villages around Bangalore or in Karnataka, people are much more enlightened. But the village that I was in doing this village report card, customarily we would go to the sarpanch or to the headman to ask him, tell him what is going on. This sarpanch, when I said to him this is what we are going to do, didn't even look up. Like with many communities in India, many surveys have been done, and he said, go ahead, one more survey, go do it. Came back to him after about 3 or 4 days, having done all the kids in the village and a lot of people in the village having helped. And then when we showed him what we had done, he said, where shall I sign? Because typically, when you see information, you sign and you send it somewhere. We had nowhere on that little piece of paper to sign. And so I said, actually, there is nowhere to sign. So in a true sarpanch fashion, he said to me, why don't you phone your seniors and find out? Because you're clearly not been trained well enough in the methods of surveys. And this affected me a bit, and I said, actually, I am the senior. This was not convincing at all. He said, if you are the senior, why are you running around in villages doing this kind of work? That's not what seniors do. But anyway, all of this actually attracted his attention, and he said, so what is this? So I said, this is about children who go to school. He knew the schooling numbers. He knew how many kids in his school go to school, how many are enrolled. So-and-so doesn't go, his father is a drunkard, you know, blah, blah, blah. He knew all of that. And then we said, well, the schooling numbers, you agree, we agree, the data agrees, it's all fine. But out of the 100 children who go to school in your village, only, let's say, 50 or 40 can read. So his next line was, this can't be true. Why can't it be true? Because data can't be true. Because even though you are well-intentioned, you don't actually go to everybody's house and collect this. You do a few, then you sit in the tea shop, and then you fill out the rest. This is how data is perceived. Until it becomes transparent, like we just heard, this is how it is. And then after that, once we passed this step to say, well, other data may be like this, but this one is not, he said it can't be true for another reason. If the children are going to school, how can they be in this condition? There was only one way to solve this, which was to say, figure it out for yourself. Here's a little tool. Let's walk down the village. He looked, he asked about 8 or 9 children, and then it sunk home that this is the case, this is the truth, and this is a big truth. Because if I have 100 kids in school and they're going to school every day, and at the end of it, the outcome that I see is so low, then something has to be done about it. But it took a good 2 hours of this whole drama to get him to get engaged. So going back to the tool, we realized that until you may have a lot of reports, you may have a lot of data, you may have a lot of answers. But if you don't have a question, you're not looking for an answer, and you're not going to connect the two. And therefore, if we want to think about what is the big outcome that Indian education needs, we have 200 million children. We have them going to school more or less every day, more in the south, a little less in the north, but they're all enrolled. But the numbers that we see in India of children who can't read are very, very high. And these are numbers that if you don't learn at the right time, you're more or less finished even before you finish 5th standard. Our right to education may, compel you to stay in school till the 8th, and you probably will enjoy school for other reasons. But if you don't learn at the right time, you're not going to make it anywhere. And therefore, this is a huge problem. So we took our village experience, we took the tools that we had, we knew there were solutions to this. This is not HIV, this is not malaria, this is not e-governance, this is not city planning, this is a lot simpler, and solutions are in your neighborhood. And we did from 2005 what is today called the Annual Status of Education Report, which is to do exactly this exercise for every district in the country. And many people in the audience have participated in this through the years, and bring out this report. And so if I want to show you what India looks like today, here is what it. So if I take a 5th grade this is for all India, rural, but if I take 5th grade almost in any state, more or less the picture looks like this. I have about half the children who are able to read a 2nd standard level text. And they may be reading even higher than this. This is a floor test. But I have half of all children in 5th who are not even at 2nd standard level. And if I look at that lower half, I see that about 25 or 20% of them are probably at 1st standard level. This is after 5 years of school. This is after we all paying 2% of our hard-earned livelihoods into this. And then we have another about almost 25-30% who are well below 1st standard, and this is in 5th. So if you were to ask me among the biggest problems that India has, I think that this is one of the biggest problems that India has. In math, the situation is even worse. But unlike many of the problems that we have solutions very close to us on hand. All it needs is for people to realize the problem and feel like they can engage. And like the two kids that you saw, it takes not forever, but it takes a couple of hours a day for 30 or 40 days working with them with materials that are appropriate to them to get them to this level. I want to just finish, and I've seen that the trend is to refer to Gandhi in these talks. So I just want to finish with a little line that we use a lot in the villages where we work. In 1930, Gandhiji walked for 28 days, and he walked 300 kilometers. And he picked up a fist of salt. Hundreds of thousands of people followed him, and India changed forever. Today, luckily, we don't need to walk. All we need to do is to pick up a book, read to children around us. I believe that hundreds and thousands of people can do this, and if we do this, then India will change forever again.